This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
What are we doing here? Seriously, that's a valid question. What exactly are we doing here? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'd think I would have asked that question at some point since starting this podcast back in 2009. I think I have, but probably off mic, off camera. We will discuss that this evening. Before we dive in, a couple of things. First of all, because this is going out on the 17th of December, the next couple of Sunday nights, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, we are going to take the time off during the holidays. We've got some writing to do. We've got some things to do as far as organizing things here in the barn. And so we'll take that time to do that. And we will rejoin you the first Sunday in January. Secondly, take a moment, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe at Gilbert House is the address, and then take a moment to download our free app to your smartphone or tablet, iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire. Why? Because it guarantees we won't be canceled. Yes, we will not be canceled from our own app. Besides, you get more than just our content. You get a Bible module with multiple translations, a messaging section, which is really a community, a growing community of people interacting with one another, praying for one another, asking questions of Sharon and me, and sometimes just sharing photos back and forth. But all of that in a self-contained, off-the-internet app so that, again, it's not exposed to the world. It's I hate to use the term, but it's a safe space. So gilberthouse.org/app, or look for the link in the top menu bar at vftb.net. Now, joining me to discuss why we do what we do, why do we look at some of the weird parts of the Bible? The gentleman who joined me at this time every month, the pastor of the Reformed Baptist Church of Northern Colorado and Boulder, and author of the highly recommended book Giants, Sons of the Gods, now available in its 10th anniversary revised and expanded edition. The best-selling author and that's Pastor Doug Van Dorn, by the way. The best-selling author and award-winning screenwriter and author of the compelling, new, and thought-provoking new theological thriller Cruel Logic, Brian Godawa, and director of the Institute of Biblical Anthropology and author of Interview with the Giant Ethno-Historical Notes on the Nephilim, Dr. Judd Burton. Well, this is our 24th episode, so we are 2 years into this, and I guess this is another topic, like last month's topic, that is long overdue. But before we get into that, I want to enlist your help for a special message to a very special viewer out there. There's a 6-year-old boy named Oliver Todd who has been, for whatever reason, God's reasons, has been following Sharon and me now for more than a year. He's got some developmental challenges that are challenges for his mother and father, Tommy and Holly Todd. Older brother Theo is as sharp as a whip, reading way above his grade level and really tracking with a lot of the topics that we discuss here on this program. But Oliver, in watching A View from the Bunker, has apparently over the last couple of Iron and Myth episodes really become fascinated with Judd's beard. So with Christmas...
Why wouldn't you be?
Good point. With Christmas coming up just over a week after this program drops, and also knowing that Oliver just had to go in for some surgery. As we're recording this, that's still coming up tomorrow, but by the time this drops, he will be in recovery. So, Oliver, we just want to say thank you for watching our programs. We want to wish you a very Merry Christmas for you and your mom and your dad and Theo. Oliver, we love you, and your videos just make us all smile.
Merry Christmas, Ollie.
Merry Christmas, Oliver.
Merry Christmas, Ollie.
All right, yeah. Boy, we are blessed, and he is smart enough that he has figured out, by the way, how to hit the start messenger call on his dad's phone. So I've gotten some surprise phone calls, but those are always a joy, and the joy that little boy experiences in learning the world around him, things that us old guys kind of take for granted, is just a reminder of the joy that is to come when we enter into that final kingdom. Last month, after we released our program on Nimrod, who was Nimrod, who was the biblical Nimrod, what do we know about him? We had a comment that I think was actually well taken. I mean, we've seen this comment, and I'm sure you guys have gotten these questions as well over the course of what you've done, your writing, your teaching, your preaching, what have you. And this, I think, was something that we maybe should have addressed early on, and I'm going to paraphrase, and I don't want to name the name of the person who did this because my point is not to try to shame or embarrass anybody, but I think it's a valid point. Why do we spend time studying things like the biblical Nimrod? Who was he? Why is he relevant? Giants in the Bible and their impact on theology. Are we focusing too much on the dark side and not spending enough time talking about the love and grace, the grace of Jesus Christ and his love and salvation? Are we majoring in the minors, in other words? And Doug is one who I know preaches in your congregation, to your congregation, on some of these so-called fringe topics. I'll let you take first crack at this. Are we missing the point by focusing on subjects like giants, gods, and dragons?
I mean, it's a good question. I think that if you just listen to a show like ours, I mean, first of all, this is what our show is. So we talk about mythology. It's
once a month.
Once a month, yeah. It's not a lot. And we're trying to sharpen each other with it. And really, it's a worldview that you have to enter into. It's not something you can just talk about once and then that's it. I mean, the more you understand it, the more you understand that you need to be studying it in order to understand it, right? So you have to keep talking about it. If all you did was listen to this kind of a show, then I could see how you could get that kind of a possibly a takeaway from it. But our show is what it is, and there's all kinds of other shows out there. I've been preaching for 22 years, and I preach the books of the Bible, and got 1,000 sermons online. And I can promise you that this is not the majority of stuff that I spend my time talking about. But I like to talk about it, and we've got a group here of men who have spent a lot of time and a lot of energy, a lot of thought, and are really experts in what we're talking about, that we're doing something that a lot of people are not doing. And I think it's important for that reason. And we're talking about the supernatural realm here, and it can be dark. It's not all dark, but there is darkness to it. And one of the things that as a pastor that I get pretty frustrated with churches about, and I've seen this with many, many people, is that it's like people feel like you can't talk about these things anywhere. And if you can't talk about it with other fellow Christians, where in the world can you talk about it with? Where can you talk about it? Who can you talk about it to? And so, I think we're trying to bring some honesty to a discussion that is rarely talked about, not well understood, to try and bring some, one of the things that I really appreciate about you guys is that we're having sane conversations. We're not going off into crazy speculation and using it to go off in wild tangents. And we're really trying to understand the subject matter of that particular episode. And I think we're trying to do things that are helpful with it. And sometimes, I don't want to steal Brian's thunder at all, because I have a feeling I know where he's going to go with this. But you need to look at the darkness. You need to know what the enemy looks like. You need to see who it is that you're fighting against. Otherwise, how can you possibly even begin to engage in a battle? And sadly, I think the American church, following the American culture, we have this weird, almost dualism where we're so materialistic and naturalistic in the way that we think about the world, and yet at the very same time, everything around us is supernatural. I was talking with a fellow in our church today about he went back to an old video game that he used to play as a kid. And he couldn't believe that the whole video game was supercharged with gods that were all over this video game. He's like, I never even knew that until I understand the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. And now I look back and I go, wow, this is everywhere. It's in our TV. It's in our commercials. It's in our movies. It's in our video games. It's all over the internet. It's everywhere that you look. But because we're so separated, in our outlook, the scientific rationalistic outlook that we pride ourselves on, It's like we can't see it. So how in the world can you start fighting a battle if it's a real battle? How can you fight it if you don't even know what you're looking at? So, I mean, those are just some of my initial thoughts as a pastor and somebody who has seen the church kind of really drop the ball on this one. And again, on the other side of it, you can drop the ball in some pretty crazy ways too. You can go off on really crazy places with this subject matter. And something that we don't want to do is do that. So hopefully we're not doing that. But those are some of my initial thoughts, Derek.
Brian, you take this fight into the into the cultural realm. You're really fighting the culture wars on the front lines with your novels, but also your script writing. Why tackle it this way by putting out there novels that are dedicated to tracking the Nephilim, the Watchers, why fight that battle?
Yeah. I suspect all of us are going to have some similar comments. And actually, I actually like the question, and I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad we're addressing it because I do think it's legitimate, and I do think that Christians who are communicating, podcasts, writing books, or whatever, speaking at conferences, whatever. I have been concerned that there might be those out there who they do spend all their time writing about the dark side, if all the books, all the sermons, all your communications are focused around that dark side material, then I do think you should question, what should your ministry really prioritize? And I do think it should be the victorious gospel of Christ and his kingdom. And, we don't need to be defensive, but for those who don't know all about us, like Doug just explained, it's the same thing with me. It's like, all my novels, I follow the theological thread of the Nephilim, which are negative monster giants, and the Watchers, who are dark fallen beings. But the context is the spiritual battle. And the reality is the Bible is all about spiritual battle from beginning to end, from Genesis to Revelation. And so, but I do agree that the context should be the victory of God's kingdom. And all my novels are precisely that. My stories are about Noah, Enoch, heroes of the Bible, making them glorious, making them warriors, fighting the battles of God, all with the war of the seed against the seed of the serpent, right? And they win victoriously. And so that's all my novels. So I have no worry or shame. I study that dark stuff in order to accurately depict the spiritual battle that we are in, and that the Bible talks about to understand God's economy better and the way things are truly going on. So I don't overemphasize it. However, I would say that the notion of the watcher paradigm or the divine counsel that we talk about, this is the principle that, over earthly authorities, there are heavenly authorities or spiritual principalities and powers. Biblically, that's the concept. And that's not necessarily good or evil. It's just a theological truth. And the interesting thing is, because of that, and because of the ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible that we are woefully uneducated about, we are not understanding a lot in the Bible. And, you could say there's a lot we have to learn about cherubim and seraphim and angels and such, but Christians love that. And we talk about that too, right? But where we're not as educated is a lot of the subtle references that we talk about in this program, whether it's the deities behind pestilence and plague, right? Deber and, whatever, all these different names of deities. And we don't catch that reading the Bible text. But in order to understand that spiritual battle in its fullness, you have to see how much it really is in the Bible that we didn't see. And so we do have to sort of give a kind of emphasis on the educational component, I think, of that spiritual darkness, only because we're not seeing it. But even in light of that, I still think I agree with the questioner's at least heart that, and it is my heart, because I actually don't like studying the dark stuff all the time, and I love when I'm writing my stories and I have, Joshua wiping out the Anakim clans, and yet Joshua is a man who has to find his own redemption in how his spirit has become broken and needs God, you know. So so I like that. And then the other thing I wanted to say was just no, I guess that was it. That was, to me, the major components that I would want to communicate to people. So thank you for the question. I agree with the intent. And in fact, we all do, and we are all seeking to live consistently with that.
Absolutely. Judd, this is a question I posed to you some years ago on the podcast. Why does this matter? Why do giants matter to Christians? And I thought your answer was absolutely brilliant.
I was thinking about that during the course of listening to Doug and Brian, and that was maybe almost 10 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago, somewhere around there. Why we should even be interested in this? And
something like that.
I answered Caesarea Philippi because of the location. That's one reason, but I think it can be. I think that's a good place to point people when we get a question that's as weighty as this one and is a valuable question. This is a question that I think implicitly, even though we deal with all of this subject matter on this show, I think that implicitly we're all sort of thinking along those lines anyway. What is although these are not usually directly salvific issues, how does this tie back to, as Brian put it, the victory here, the victory in the struggle against good and evil, against God and the devil? And so for me, not just because of the scholarly work that I've done on the site itself, but the Caesarea Philippi episode illustrates a lot of the importance there because of the location, because of the weighty statements that Jesus makes at Caesarea Philippi against the cultural context of that entire region, as we and the audience know quite well because of the subject matter that we cover. But I think Caesarea Philippi, Paneas, does a good job of encapsulating that, because Jesus goes there to, amongst other things, give warning to the denizens of this realm that would have been the disembodied spirits of giants and the very land peopled by giants at one time. And so that's certainly one reason why we should study it. And if, by extension, if Jesus is our exemplar, consider how much of his ministry was directed towards addressing this, even if it was married to sickness or some other problem that somebody was having. More often than not, Jesus is directly confronting the demonic in much of his ministry. So if that's the example we're to follow, then it's certainly not something that we need to be leaving in the periphery. It's certainly something that we need to be addressing. And as Doug pointed out, we're doing that in a rational manner. We're not being overly speculative about it. When we are speculative about it, it's certainly from an informed position, I think, because all of us have spent quite a bit of time and serious thought on these matters. But circling back to Jesus' ministry, so much of it was directed towards this. And in fact, multiple places in Scripture call us to expose the darkness. I'm thinking of Johannine literature in particular, but John uses all of these elements from Greek philosophical dualism, and light and dark are very prominent in his prose. So whether it's articulated explicitly in Scripture or it's sort of in there subtly, it's something that's supposed to be part of our walk, part of our duty as disciples in many ways. And of course, we've almost got a laboratory setting to study this in the world that's unfolding around us, because it not only informs Scripture, when we look at these matters in the way that we do on this program. But we can use those same approaches to find the ensconcement in darkness that so many elements of culture have today connected to some of these ancient deities. So the primary reason is because our exemplar is Christ, and we're to follow His example. Really, everything we do is subject to that. It's subsidiary to that, tertiary.
I was looking up our first interview on this podcast because I think that was shortly after I heard you on another program talk about Caesarea Philippi and the reason that Jesus went there. That is, of course, the location of Banyas, or the Grotto of Pan, which is a big cave that in the first century was believed by Jews and their neighbors in that region to literally be the entrance to the netherworld. The first century Jewish historian Josephus wrote that no one had ever been able to lower a plumb line long enough to touch bottom. They believed it was literally a bottomless cave that led you into the netherworld. And this was where Jesus specifically went to declare his divinity, asking, who do people say the Son of Man is? And that's a whole, Book of Enoch discussion right there, the appropriation of that title from the Book of First Enoch. But then he asked, who do you say that I am? And that's where Peter said, well, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus confirmed that. Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for this flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. Divine confirmation of this revelation is what Jesus was telling Peter. And then he says, I say you are Petros, and on this Petra, this rock, this 9,200-foot mountain that's been described by scholars as the Canaanite Olympus, I will build my ecclesia, my congregation, my assembly, and the gates of Hades, the gates of hell, this big cave right over here, will not prevail against it. Judd, I remember to this day mowing the lawn in the backyard of this little place we were renting in Shelbyville, Indiana, when I heard you say that on this podcast while I was listening while I'm mowing the lawn. And I was like, I was familiar with the divine counsel concept. I'd been following Mike Heiser's work for several years at that point, but that was the first time I had ever heard that there could be geographic connections to some of these events. And then when you start looking at the geography of the ancient world and looking at the timeline of what Jesus did leading up to that event, he had just returned from the region of Tyre and Sidon in Phoenicia, the coast of Lebanon. And the road that took him back to the Sea of Galilee, where his ministry was based, where he fed the 5,000, he cured cast demons out of the Gerasene demoniac. Then he went back to Mount Hermon. That's a 30-mile walk each way across rough terrain. Doug, we were just there back in March, and you vouch that's really hilly terrain. Then you got to go down through that valley that used to be a marsh, and then come back up the other side. So this was a very specific trip that Jesus went specifically to make that point. And then, of course, the Gospel of Matthew says 7 days later, he climbed a very high mountain, which could only have been Mount Hermon, for the Transfiguration. So he went there and made a theological point, not just through his words, but through the geography of what he did. And quite honestly, Judd, this is why Sharon and I are working on a book that we're going to title The Gates of Hell, not just because it's a catchy title, but to point out that there are a number of things that Jesus did in his ministry that relate to this relationship between the demonic realm, the fallen realm, and his mission to overcome it and reverse it, to use Mike Heiser's term.
The very context of this victorious kingdom of God that people want us to emphasize is communicated within the context of a fight against evil and understanding what that evil is about. So yeah, that's a perfect example. Excellent example.
Today I preached on the triumphal entry of Christ on the donkey in Luke 19 as I'm going through the Gospel of Luke. And you think about this, of all these people that are coming, ushering him in, shouting that he's the king, Hosanna to the king, as he's coming in on a donkey. So he's not coming in on a horse. He's not coming in on Shadowfax. He's not coming in on silver. He's coming in on the nasty little guy from Shrek. And
That's good.
there,
I wish you were my pastor.
and and I said that today, and I came across a quote that basically said, if these people would have understood, they never would have charged him with sedition and trying to overthrow the government. He wasn't coming in on a white horse. That's the war horse. And yet I say this because he is coming in to fight a war. And that's the irony of coming in on a mule. And so if all you can see is the Jesus who is the happy teacher Jesus who gives us 10 rules to live by, and that's all his ministry is about, and he has a couple of miracles that he does, you are completely missing the point of this. And
that's the dangerous view, really.
That's exactly what it is. And so bringing in the supernatural to this, all of a sudden you can start seeing, like Derek was saying, there are so many things he is doing in this ministry, and he's not here to fight a war against Caesar. He's here to fight a war against the devil. But if you don't talk about the devil and you don't know what the devil is and you don't understand that he's actually real, and like so many evangelical Christians, you're never given allowed to think about this. How in the world can you possibly make sense of the things that he's doing? And the answer is, I think we've seen this for the last 50, 100 years. You can't make sense of it. And so you turn Jesus into something that he completely isn't. And, I'm wanting to bring people back to understand that they're not ushering in a Messiah who's going to be a political ruler, which is what they thought they were going to get. And yet he is fighting a war, as we've all said, and this war is in a supernatural realm, and you have to understand what that is. And by highlighting, all these different people or these creatures or these stories, you start to be able to make sense of that. And it's like, it blows my mind away. And it's so exciting and so incredible to think about the things that Jesus is doing that I went my entire life not even having the foggiest idea what he was doing.
And you're absolutely right about that, Doug. This is why Sharon tells a story about a church that she used to attend years ago before we met. It was a congregational church, and I don't think the denomination matters. I think it was just the pastor and the community in which this was the church to attend if you were anybody in this particular community. And there was one Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, where the pastor actually said, "I don't really understand the whole resurrection thing, and I don't really believe that this. I think it's a metaphor for what Jesus was trying to teach us." And she, stopped attending church shortly thereafter because that is so central to the gospel message. Paul wrote an entire chapter to the church at Corinth, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, which is all about the literal physical resurrection of Jesus and why that is central to the gospel. But again, it just sounds like a neat, special effect sort of trick. Just, okay, he's just proving how, that he's God because he can resurrect. Yeah, but when you start understanding what was going on in the northern Galilee and how that area was known as the region of the dead, there are Canaanite myths that locate tombs for the Rephaim, the demonic spirits of the kings who were of old, who to the Canaanites were pretty cool. You just, sacrificed to them and they did good stuff for you, like the Greeks with the heroes like Heracles and so on. This was well known in the ancient world, and Jesus picked that region, the northern Galilee and Bashan, to base his ministry. There are Ugaritic texts that literally summon the spirits of the Rephaim to the threshing floor or tabernacle of El, which was the summit of Mount Hermon, where they would be resurrected by the blessing of the name of El. And they arrived for this feast to be held in their honor at dawn of the third day, according to the text. And these are texts that are 1,200 years older, prior to the birth of Jesus. So he was reversing all of that, stuff that would have been well known to the Jews and their pagan neighbors. But if we don't understand that context and we don't understand the, I think there are hints of it in the Old Testament where there's a prohibition on eating sacrifices on the third day because it's known from pagan texts that the sacrificial meal for the dearly departed was eaten on the third day. That was absolutely forbidden in Leviticus. It's one of those laws that we don't, kind of skip over, not really pay attention to. Say, oh, third day, well, it's probably because the food is spoiled by then. No, it's because this was part of the rituals of feeding the dead practiced by the people who surrounded ancient Israel. And
I'd also go ahead.
And I was going to say, and this is just all inspired by these demonic spirits who, in all likelihood, were the spirits of the giants who were destroyed in the flood of Noah.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that. Thinking about this again, it's context is everything, really. I mean, it always is for stories, but so much of what we are uncovering is the polemical nature of the text, and so. Any one of 100 things, whether it's Leviathan, my personal favorite image in the whole Bible, or the Baal and the usage. We've talked about this, how the Bible uses the language of the storm god Baal that the Canaanites worshipped, and it drew from that language and applied it to Yahweh. And the purpose of it was polemical, saying basically Baal is not the storm god who brings you life. Yahweh is, things like what you need to understand that Baal and what he's all about to understand how the glory of God is being communicated polemically. So it's part of the package, and Leviathan's the same thing. All pagan cultures have sea dragons of chaos and what does that mean in terms of chaos versus order? And then how does the Hebrew writers, how do they take that image that is essentially, it's pagan, but they take it and use the same imagery and redefine it. They subvert it. And the whole nature of polemics is subversion. And subversion is an act of spiritual war. You are taking the language of the opponent and you are capturing it and you are converting it into language that supports your worldview or your God. And that's what the Bible's doing. And so you have to understand Baal, what Baal means. If you want to understand the meaning of Jezebel and the condemnation of Jezebel, it's all connected with her name, which has to do with Baal and how they're mocking Baal as a dung heap, right? All these things are glorifications of God through polemical attacks on the dark, evil side.
Yeah, it's about taking back sacred space and sacred time. We're right on the cusp of we're in the Christmas season right now, and probably don't have to tell any of you gentlemen about the controversies in our own community, I suppose, about the celebration or not celebrating Christmas. But I always feel
we addressed that on 12 shows ago.
Actually. But that's part of our marching orders is to take back sacred space and sacred time. We're supposed to be on the offensive, especially if we're interpreting that passage in Matthew chapter 16 about prevailing and indeed withstanding against the gates of hell. We're to go back and take back that territory, take back that time. So that's what.
If you don't know the enemy, you can't beat him.
Not to derail the conversation, but I saw just a wonderful exchange on social media the other day about responding to Christians who have been misled into thinking that the holiday of Christmas was originally an appropriation of a pagan holiday. The historical research shows that it was not, but even if it was, it's like, why not take it?
Yeah,
and that was the response here. It's like, okay, look, if you keep complaining about this, we're going to take Black Friday and Cyber Monday and turn those into Christian holidays too. No, wait. Okay, that's it. You just lost Shark Week. Shark Week is now a 7-day Christian feast. Shark Week. Actually, there's some legitimacy to that, because you're right. We as Christians seem to be playing defense all the time, back on our heels, and I think a lot of it comes back to just not knowing the enemy. we don't know what we don't know. And so when we do start to realize that there's something more going on out there, we overreact and suddenly everything is pagan. We can't do anything. And that is really not what Jesus marched right up to what everybody knew in his day was the literal entrance to Hades and said, here's where I'm going to build my church.
Literally acting out the Genesis 3 material. He's literally walking around on the serpent, the land of the serpent, Bashan. His heel is literally crushing. He's walking around on the land of the serpent. That's one of those things that you just sort of ride over, when you're reading a passage, if you don't know the context behind it. And again, there is an exemplar for us, and B, the fact that we are supposed to be not on the defensive all the time. We are supposed to be taking it back.
Let me address something here. See what you guys think about it. It has to do with kind of the sensational nature of some of the topics that we might talk about, other podcasts are talking about, and that everybody loves to talk about and think about.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you have these. I'll just give you my personal experience. So, and I'll go back to Mike Heiser as our good friend that we all miss. And just kind of tell you how I experience, and maybe this will help the reader or the people listening to the podcast understand how I was reading and how I think about these things personally. So I'm reading his early copy of The Unseen Realm. He called it The Myth That Is True, and I just devoured the thing. Okay. Now there's all kinds of things that are in that book that I have not heard about before. So divine counsel. I had heard about giants, but I didn't really understand it very much. This whole Christ in the Old Testament stuff was just wow. And then, he kind of brings it into the New Testament and really talks about the war. So there's all these different kinds of things. And I'm sitting here trying to think about it in my own head, having nobody to talk to. I didn't, I think, Brian, you were the first person that I met.
Yeah.
I was able to talk to a little bit about this. Yeah. I didn't meet Derek for a couple more years and Dud for a couple more years. And nobody in my circles are thinking about this stuff. So the only way I can figure out to think about it is to start writing. Okay. So I basically kind of rewrote his book and nothing I could do with that. I can't sell that. I can't do anything with it. It's total plagiarism, but it helped me think through it. Right. And then as I'm working through that, I thought, there's a couple things I want to pursue. And I'm thinking about this as a pastor, somebody who wants to help his people learn to think about this, but not go crazy with it. And so I started writing about the giants, and when I got done with that, I thought, this book could probably sell, and I think this would be interesting to people. And of course, it turns out, yeah, that's exactly right, and that's kind of become what everybody wants to talk about when they have me on their podcast, and the vast majority is the Nephilim stuff. But that's not where my heart is. I talk about it because I know a lot of people don't know about it, and I know that there's all kinds of different avenues and different podcasts that people have out there that have different audiences, and so I'm fine talking about it all the time, but I don't want to talk about it all the time. When I think about his book specifically, it's the Christ in the Old Testament stuff that just thrilled me. I was just like, wow. And so that's when I decided to write the Angel of the Lord book with my fellow pastor, Matt Foreman, because that's the stuff that I'm like, this is just amazing. I mean, it opens up the totality of Scripture in ways that I couldn't even imagine. But here's the deal. To really get the Christ in the Old Testament thing, you really have to understand the Nephilim part of it, which is exactly why he wrote the book the way that he did. And so you can't just talk about one or the other. You have to talk about them all. But I think that this is what I wanted to get your opinion about, is that I think that our natural inclination to go to the sensational things can really take us over. Where we become personally unbalanced ourselves. And I mean, I think that can be true for any of us for people listening to podcasts that are like ours, people that they like the exciting stuff. And then they don't want to get into anything else. They don't want to dig deeper into other theology, systematic theology. Who cares about that? All they want to talk about is the Nephilim and demons. And it can be a real danger. And so I think that, going back to the original question, there's probably a deeper level on which this question is working that I think that, I kind of want to address when bringing this up and just see what you guys think about that.
No, I'm
That's
glad
a
you did,
great-
because I was thinking of going there as well, because I think all of us have seen researchers who've gone down this trail who then wind up in kind of in the weeds.
Nephilim nuts, I call them.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just a fascination with the topic itself, overbalancing the totality of the gospel message, which is Christ's victory over death. I mean, this is literally a war against the dead. If you define the dead as those hybrid entities who died in the flood of Noah, essentially being used as a supernatural army by the fallen realm to spread message. I mean, there's a reason Paul called aberrant theology doctrines of demons. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. But there's also perhaps a desire for some of us, and I've talked with Sharon about this over the years. I started out in radio broadcasting in college, and like most of the people I knew in broadcasting, it was because I had a psychological need for people to like me. And so thankfully, my wife has helped me, I think, and the Holy Spirit has helped me get beyond that. But, the big thrill of my life shortly after college was jumping from Peoria, which was, I think, market number 224 or something in terms of size in the U.S., to Philadelphia in one move. That was the fourth largest radio market in one jump. And I thought I had it made. And I learned after getting there was that was not really as satisfying as I thought it was going to be. My point is that had what we are doing now come earlier, I might be doing these podcasts for different reasons than for trying to dig deeper and show people how spectacular the Bible is on its own. Would be looking for, the next big thing, as it were. And I think that can be a danger for some people who get into the podcasting or video forum, to glorify not Christ, coming, risen and coming again, but themselves. And like I said, looking back at myself 40 years ago, I would, even 30, 20 years ago, would not have been really ready for doing what we are. And not to say that I'm doing this perfectly now, but I can see how this could be a temptation. Hey, I got more clicks when I do shows about blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And so I will focus on the blah, blah, blah instead of trying to do other stuff.
Yeah. In fact, I would give an exhortation to our audience. If you do watch us and you are embarking upon a journey. Now, we all have seasons of interest and focus, and that's a
natural,
very important context, because sometimes we've discovered, like when we discover this, it's like we just ate it up, and it might take as much as a year of study to really understand the picture. So that's understandable. But if you're watching us and you're only just continuing to get more into the esoteric, bizarre things of the Bible to try to find the most fantastical things that are bizarre or dark, and you're just obsessing over these things and more about giants and this, and you're not being drawn to like what you said, Derek. My heart is to see the beauty and depth of God's word. That's how I see it, as because there's a beauty in the depth of theology and the imagery of how God communicates himself through the literature, through the symbolism and all that stuff, as well as through, even when they're referring to the demonic entities, a lot of it's symbolic, right? So that's, if you're not being drawn deeper into God's glory and into that picture of, this is a battle we're in, and I want to be a part of the fight to communicate the gospel to other people, then you're not listening to us correctly. But also, I would say, our exhortation to us is to examine ourselves as we're doing this and continue to remember that we do want to always, it's like if you're going to do a sermon on the Nephilim, make sure you end up pointing towards Christ, that simple homiletic procedure. Well, we should be doing that as well. In that, and I do think we do that as we talk about these things. But I'm just saying that's the thing that I guess that's my promise to our audience is, we will seek to continue to elevate Christ and His glory and His kingdom as the ultimate hero story. You can't have a hero story, folks, without a battle against evil. So it's like, if you want a good hero, I just want to see the heroic elements of Christ. Well, in the context is a battle with evil. So you've got to have that part of it. But yeah, so that would be my promise from us. And then, the exhortation to our audience, please, we don't want to be part of leading anyone down an obsessive path away from what matters, which is, at the end of the day, all authority has been given to Christ. And so disciple the nations. If you're not using this information in some way to communicate Christ to others and discipling the nations, then you're not doing it right. And we aren't doing it right if we don't either.
Absolutely. Judd, you actually teach through online courses studies that get into some of the myths and legends that deal with some of the darker stories of human condition. We talk about this like every year at Halloween. It's kind of a long-running Halloween series here on this podcast. Vampires, werewolves, ghouls, goblins, things like that. Why even... that seems like that's even a step farther than just dealing with demons and Nephilim. Why go there? And what? How do you use that to communicate the power of Christ?
Well, I think sort of picking up the themes that Brian was hitting on, and he understands this as a storyteller, that this mythic imagery, these mythic themes resonate with people. They always have, and in a lot of ways, myth is like a it's like a mother tongue for humanity, because it's so fundamental. And God, that's a wonderful thing. It's not pagan necessarily. It can be, but God created us that way. I mean, we understand things that way through story and through, in particular, the hero's struggle, the hero's journey. That's such a fundamental and universal thing. And although I don't agree with his theology or lack thereof in most cases, I do think that Joseph Campbell was clever insofar as that he nailed that down with the concept of the monomyth. And we recognize those themes on this program, and it points us directly towards Jesus, as we've been saying here. That's the ultimate hero story. But in terms of extending into the realm of more folkloric elements, because there is some overlap between mythology and folklore. Folklore tends to represent more cultural experience, either on the individual or the societal level. And I think that's where anthropologically we find a lot of accounts of direct encounters with these kinds of entities. And for so long, and I know this is true of my own, personal upbringing in various churches, is that we've had this very dualistic approach to good and evil, or angels and demons in particular. In other words, there's no taxonomic variation in all of that. Well, now, over the last 15, 20, 25 years, especially, biblical studies has taken us in a direction where we're beginning to map that out with more detail. And so in a lot of these manifestations of these creatures, like the vampire, the werewolf, the ghoul, chimera of all shape and color, there's a universality to their behavior, and it's more often than not detrimental to the people that encounter them, that experience their very behavior is demonic. It's very characteristic of what we would expect from demons, to use and thwart and deceive and destroy and kill and plague. So there's a value to studying that, because people and all you have to do really is, don't take my word for it necessarily, go talk to a missionary. These guys will bring back stories that will curl your hair, because they they're working with peoples that still encounter these things with great frequency. It's not that it obviously not that it doesn't happen in our own society, but that's why I say through the lens of anthropology, you can look at these real experiences that people are having within the context of their culture. And for me, I suppose the scholarly research treasure trove for me has been the application of these anthrohistorical models to some of these questions about those kinds of folkloric entities. I teach, in fact, it's the most popular program that I have at the Institute. As you call it, Derek, the Monsters 101, the preternatural morphology. Well, I called it preternatural morphology because we are mapping out that domain with greater detail now, and they're preternatural because these are entities that exhibit both spiritual and physical characteristics. And so, because of their demeanor, because of their behavior, because of the recurring themes, mythic and folkloric themes that you find in these stories and encounters, there's a real value to studying this because it's all part of the what you might call the mission intelligence that we need for the struggle that we're talking about tonight. And so I'm excited to be able to offer that perspective to students that are taking it. Like I say, so far that is the most popular program that I have at the Institute.
And certainly unique, but as Paul wrote to the church it was a church at Corinth, we are not ignorant of the enemy's devices. I actually flagged that verse. I got to go back and make sure I'm not quoting it out of context here. 2 Corinthians 2, verse 10. Fellows, any final comments, or should we get about our Christmas preparations here?
It's all good. I'm good.
Well, again, this is going to be released on the 17th, so the next couple of weekends we've got the 24th and 31st. So we are taking a couple of weeks off for holiday to spend time with our wife and our new rescue dog, Grace, appropriately named, for she was rescued by love, as have we all. And so, gentlemen, we will see you in the new year, and I wish you and your families all a very blessed and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Indeed. Merry Christmas.
Please check the notes below this program, whether you're watching or listening, and you'll find links there for the websites, Dr. Judd Burton, Brian Godawa, and Pastor Doug Van Dorn. Please follow their work, and I can say honestly, it is an honor to engage with these men on a regular basis, both in front of these cameras and also behind the scenes. So a true blessing to bring you these programs every month. Coming up, Democrats have a cunning plan to save democracy. They plan to save democracy, apparently, by killing it. Yeah, bless their pointy little heads. We'll tell you about that straight ahead on A View from the Bunker. Sharon and I really appreciate your support, and that's why every single month we want to make a special offer available to you at the Gilbert House store. And now that we're into the holidays, we're offering extra specials.
We really are. You know, last year we had some holiday specials that people just really enjoyed getting. Lots and lots of you went and ordered there, and we thank you for that. We're doing the same thing this year. Lots of great deals, including Red Wing Saga specials, Derek's book specials, and blowout prices on all of our DVDs.
Yes, but if you prefer streaming video, so you get instant access in full HD.
And no shipping.
And no shipping, right. We've got special discounts available now at our online streaming site, gilberthouse.org/video. That includes even our full-length travelogumentaries, our Wars of the Gods Volume 1 and Volume 2, now at a special discounted price through the end of January.
That is such a deal. And by the way, those of you who have loved Vicki Joy Anderson's book, They Only Come Out at Night, that book is also on special December and January.
We want to make this information available to you. We understand that around the holidays, finances get a little tight, so we're offering special pricing on just about everything in our online store. We're all in the middle of a battlefield.
We are.
And we all need good information. Please take advantage of our special offers, gilberthouse.org/video and gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support.
Amen.
Driving the internet to think from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at vftb.net. Among other places, our main web hub, of course, is gilberthouse.org. On social media, Twitter, or formerly Twitter, now X, at View from Bunker. My personal X account, at Derek Gilbert. Truth Social, Gab, MeWe, Getter, at Derek P. Gilbert. Also Threads, but who cares? And if you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment, subscribe the web channel for our YouTube channel, rather, for all of our video content at Gilbert House. You can also follow Unraveling Revelation at Unraveling Revelation on YouTube.com. But then I will say again, please take a moment, download our free mobile app for iOS, Android, or Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. Well, Democrats have a cunning plan to save democracy because they're warning the imminent demise of. And by the way, I will say, just if you're watching this program or listening to this program for any length of time, you know that I know, and I know that you know. So we all know that this is not a democracy. The United States is, in fact, at least in its original design, a representative republic. So it is not truly a democracy. The founders of the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, understood that democracy is essentially mob rule, and we see where that gets us. Well, that said, Democrats keep using the word, and they are using it to whip up support by threatening by warning of the end of democracy if Donald Trump should somehow win the presidential election in 2024. He is polling well ahead of the rest of the Republican candidates, and most recent polls comparing him against Joe Biden show Trump winning handily. So you've got Hillary Clinton warning that a Trump victory would be the end of democracy. Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, not a serious journalist. She propagated the Russiagate conspiracy theory for 3 years when that story was full of more holes than traditional Swiss cheese. Anyway, Maddow warning of executions. Yes, Donald Trump, she says, will execute his political opponents if he's elected. Really? I mean, come on. You and I both know she doesn't really believe that. She's just saying it to try to stir up stuff and get clicks. Anyway, the irony here is that the plan that Democrats have, apparently, for saving democracy is just driving a stake through its heart. This week from the Executive Committee of the Florida Democratic Party, they told voters that Democrat voters in the state of Florida would not be allowed to vote for anyone other than Joe Biden in the primary. Yes. Even though there are challengers to Joe Biden in the primary, they will not be allowed on the ballot. Only Biden will appear on the primary ballot. And if you want to write in a candidate just to show your discontent with Joe Biden, forget it. Because under Florida law, if there's only one candidate on the primary ballot, then there is no vote. Seriously. Now, if you're in Florida, you already know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I should have known this because this is not the first time this has happened, but I just learned it this week. Frankly, it's surprising that they can get away with this. Either party can get away with this in the 21st century. And yet, this is the third time this will happen in Florida since the turn of the century. Anyway, so basically what's happening is this: the Florida Democratic Party has already decreed that Joe Biden wins the primary. There will be no vote for president for Democrats at the primary level in March. Welcome to America. Here's your sign. Well, there's a good reason, I guess, for Democrats to want to do this. According to CNN, their polling shows that about 2/3 of voters, Democrat voters, 2/3 of Democrat voters want the party to run somebody else for president. And Wall Street Journal poll shows that 73% of all voters believe that Joe Biden is just too old. So you can kind of guess, you can kind of understand where the Florida Democratic Party is coming from, but still, to just tell Democratic voters in that state, you're going to vote for Biden and like it. But as I said, this is not the first time this has happened. It happened in 2012 when Barack Obama was the nominee, and on the Republican side, it happened in 2004 with George W. Bush. It was wrong then. It is wrong now. And frankly, we would like to see prominent Democrats warning of the end of democracy if Trump wins, perhaps call out the Republican, or rather the Florida Democratic Party for its undemocratic approach to the primary this year, or frankly, just be quiet. And to the Florida Democratic Party, bless your pointy little heads. Well, this spring, we will be in Dallas, the great state of Texas, for the total eclipse of the sun. That's April 8th of 2024. Hear the Watchmen, their Prophetic Signs in the Heavenlies Conference, April 5th through 7th, and then stay on an extra day and watch the total eclipse of the sun from the comfort of the hotel. Join us. Sharon and I will be there alongside good friends like Dr. Michael Lake, Pastor Casper McLeod, David Hevner, Dave Hodges, Jamie Walden, David Paxton, Colonel David Giamona, Paul Begley. We'll also get a chance to meet some new friends, Dr. Carrie Mayday, Tuv Rose, Tracy Tennant will be there as well, John Moore, and much more. And yes, there will be streaming video, but if you can get to Dallas that first weekend in April, we encourage you to do it. They've reduced the registration price for this conference to just $35. This is the lowest price we have seen for any major conference with this many speakers. And so we are honored to be a part of this. So please, if you can get to Dallas, do take advantage of this. Just $35 at the door. Again, streaming video is available. You can find out more and register online at hearthewatchmen.com. That's hearthewatchmen.com. Now, the reason we'll be in Dallas that weekend is because we have moved our tour of Israel from early April to November. Originally scheduled March 31st through April 9th, we are now moving it back to November 3rd through 12th of 2024 with an optional 3-day extension to Jordan. We pray that will allow enough time for the war there to wind down and the security situation to wind up. This will also give time for those involved in the tour and also the support staff at tourist sites, restaurants, hotels, to return to work after being called up by the IDF's reserves. In fact, one of our tour guides and the CEO of the tour company, Aaron Lipkin, both been called up to reserve. What's funny is that the tour guide, Kuti Ben David, is actually the major of the reserve unit, and Aaron, the CEO of the company, they kind of flipped roles because Aaron is first sergeant. So now he has to take orders from one of the tour guides. But we pray that by next November, things will be quiet once again and that you will join us. Timothy Alberino, still our special guest, and we will take you places that most tours will not go. Archaeological sites that are important to the biblical narrative, but not on the usual tourist stops like Gilgal, Rephaim. And we hope, and we should be able to because it's bus accessible, one of the most unique dolmens in the entire Levant, the one with the 50-ton capstone, that's at the Shamir, just outside the Shamir kibbutz in northern Galilee. But as of right now, some of the sites, especially a very important site, Caesarea Philippi, Banyas, the Grotto of Pan, is within the evacuation zone because it's so close to the border with Lebanon. So anyway, that is scheduled now November 3rd through 12th of 2024. You can find out more and reserve your place at gilbertsinisrael.com, gilbertsinisrael.com. If you're listening and subscribing with your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, or wherever fine podcasts are sold, we appreciate your thumbs up or good review. And we tip our headphones once again to our inimitable announcer, DC Good. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, and it's released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Again, a reminder that next Sunday and the Sunday after, December 24th and 31st, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, we will be on holiday, returning the first Sunday in January 7th of 2024. And until then, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.